This program is brought to you by the following proud sponsors: Paulson Manufacturing, saving the eyes and lives of workers and first responders by manufacturing the highest quality and most reliable safety protective gear in the world. And by the All-Tech Media Group, the region's leading multimedia video production and marketing company, creating powerful and innovative marketing strategies that deliver exponential returns.
Hello, I'm Jeff Allen. Welcome to Manufacturer's Corner, where we discuss the news and issues, topics, and trends that impact your business and the manufacturing sector locally, across the country, and around the world. By many accounts, we're in the middle of a manufacturing renaissance of sorts in the U.S., and a contributing factor to this growth is the reshoring of manufacturing operations that had been previously outsourced overseas. To talk about it and shed some light on the current trend of reshoring, I'm joined in studio by Rosemary Coates, Executive Director of the Reshoring Institute. Ms. Coates has 25 years of experience in supply chain management, operations management, project management, and systems consulting. Ms. Coates is also a member of the Board of Directors at the University of San Diego. And Ms. Coates, I'd like to welcome you to Manufacturer's Corner. Thank you so much for stopping on in today. We appreciate it. It's good to have you. This is a really fantastic topic and very exciting to many manufacturing cheerleaders out there, not the least of which are those who are in the business, of course, and own manufacturing businesses here in the country. We're hearing and we're reading a lot about this reshoring bandwagon. And there are a lot more companies that are jumping on board and trying to bring those manufacturing operations and those jobs back to the United States. Tell us, you're at the Reshoring Institute. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But from your perspective, how true is this, and how advanced are we in this renaissance as far as that goes?
Well, a recent study conducted by a major consulting firm indicates that 54% of companies over $1 billion in revenue are reshoring now or considering reshoring. So
54%.
54% is more than half. And frankly, we're seeing a lot of momentum and a lot of interest in reshoring.
What is the main reason that companies are doing this now?
You know, I think there's a variety of reasons. Certainly, risk in supply chain is one. Quality issues with sourcing, particularly in China. There is, latency in the supply chain. There's increasing costs in logistics and some wage increase, although, statistics say that isn't going to have a huge effect right now. That's a little further out. And then there's this thing called economic patriotism, where as Americans, we know and understand now how important it is to have manufacturing at the heart of our economy. And without that, and we've really put a hole in that part of the economy in the past 10 or 15 years. And without that, we really can't grow and be successful and continue to be successful and have a strong economy. And people recognize that. I think a lot of that was based also on the last presidential election, where both Mitt Romney and Obama were discussing sort of China bashing and discussing how we needed to bring jobs back. And suddenly a lot of it, became pretty common. A lot of Americans became aware of the importance of rebuilding the economy through rebuilding manufacturing. So there's a high level of interest. There are some good economic reasons for it. There's some pain in some of the sourcing that's been done in Asia over the past 15 or 20 years. And all of that together has really fueled the momentum to bring manufacturing back.
I've heard that one of the big reasons, of course, and you touched on it just a little bit, was the increasing wages that the Chinese manufacturing plants are paying their workers there, and it's every single day. It seems that the majority of the things that we pick up and we put in our hands or we use will have a "Made in China" label on it or something like that. So it's manufacturing in China has been going on for years and years and will continue to do so, but those wages, as far as that goes, are we seeing enough of an increase there that we could see a more full-scale kind of reshoring in terms of businesses coming back in a more aggressive way? Or, I mean, are we still decades from that, or that maybe that will never happen?
I think it depends on the industry. So wage rates, for example, manufacturing rates in China, the eastern seaboard of China, are somewhere around $3.60 an hour or something like that. A little less expensive inland, and there's some places where it might be slightly higher. So even if the wage rate quadrupled, right? So now it's $16 an hour over the next, I don't know, 15 years or so. That's still way less than the average manufacturing wage rate in the U.S., which is $26 and change, about $26.10 this year. So there's still a big disparity. Right. So if you have a lot of labor content in your product, then it makes sense to look for a low-cost labor market. If you can extract that labor and automate, right, or you have a product that doesn't require so much labor, then the labor costs are not so influential.
We can go into the minutia, but I would assume that once you compound on top of all of that the cost of logistics, bringing the goods over, and of course any tariffs that go on top of that, and of course the transportation from the ports along the rail corridor, it all adds up. And so obviously you're talking about increasing costs probably across the board, I guess. Tell me a little bit about the Reshoring Institute. This is something that you've been involved with for some time, but the Institute itself is relatively new, is that right?
Yes, it is. So actually I have been consulting to global organizations for 15 years, 20 years, and doing a lot of offshoring. So I helped a lot of companies set up production facilities in China, for example. China is my specialty area, a lot of expansion there and so forth. But you know, as we recognize that that had a detrimental effect on the U.S. economy, a lot of my clients came to me and said, we really want to think about a global strategy now. So not necessarily bringing all of the manufacturing back, but what could we bring back? What products could we innovate and automate the production, localize the product for this market, and bring at least part of that production back? So we started doing some of this consulting, and then about a year ago established the Reshoring Institute, which is a 501c3 IRS designated nonprofit. And it's under the umbrella of the University of San Diego. The reason why is because USD has a great program, graduate program in supply chain management. It's also the school where I went to graduate school. I'm an alumni. So it's my alma mater. So we established it under that umbrella, and we now take on interns. So we have 3 paid interns every semester, and we're helping companies do research or small projects. And the reason why that's important is because from a consulting perspective, the projects are usually bigger and more complicated and maybe take 6 months to complete. But what we found is a lot of companies that are reshoring are small and medium-sized businesses, and they just need a little bit of help. They need a small project, or they need a small research project. For example, we had an electronics company that was looking at how they could label their products made in the USA. And so we did the research for them to determine how they could do that in terms of the content, and we evaluated 5 different states where they might manufacture. So those are kind of small projects, and it's inexpensive, and we use student researchers, so it all works for everybody.
So your program is really in its infancy, but it's starting to get some traction with some of the folks that you've consulted with in the past and others that are coming along. What are some of the other ways that the Institute is helping some of the companies, and what are the types of companies that you're working with? I mean, are these all manufacturers, or are you also talking to retailers and getting their feedback as well?
Pretty much across the board. So we have electronics, we've got some toys, we have metal products that we're talking to, we have baking goods, baking products. We are talking to retailers. We are actively participating in the Walmart U.S. manufacturing initiatives. Walmart is really leading the charge from the retailer side.
And let's and if you don't mind, let's camp out on that just for just a minute, because Walmart is obviously the world's largest retailer, but one that was really receiving and has received probably the lion's share of scrutiny for being this American store that where America shops, essentially, if you will. That's not their official slogan, but that's, I mean, it's the largest retailer in the country, and yet so many people said, well, you know, it's unbelievable how many of the products we'll buy at Walmart are made in China or made elsewhere. They're not made in America. So let's talk about that. They have this new initiative you just mentioned. What kind of initiative is it? I mean, how big in scope, and what are they trying to achieve through all this?
Well, you're right. Walmart has, over the years, offshored almost all of the products that it was sourcing. So they even moved their sourcing group to China for a period of time. But what happened was, because they were doing that, and the number of manufacturing jobs in the U.S. decreased as a result, because of the size of Walmart. The people that were working in those manufacturing jobs were also Walmart's customer base. And so they figured out that, you know, they were losing customers because these people were out of work, right? Yes. So they started this U.S. manufacturing initiative, which is really, I mean, they are leading the pack there. It's really pretty phenomenal. And they have pledged $250 billion over 10 years to spend on goods that are manufactured in the U.S. So they're looking for suppliers now that can bring products to them that are manufactured in the U.S., or they're helping suppliers reshore manufacturing so they can produce products in the U.S. that will then be sold in their stores. And not only are they just, you know, announcing that kind of product, they're really helping the suppliers, and they are helping them find bank loans to finance production, for example. They have what they call open call days, where they allow suppliers to come in and show them new products. And, you know, it's a huge, robust initiative that's you know, really to be.
That's phenomenal, and it really
respected.
is for a company like that to come back with that type of initiative and try to kind of win back, if you would, I guess the hearts of those individuals that may have been negatively impacted by their moves in the past to kind of outsource that stuff. Do you expect other large companies and retailers to follow suit? Or are you starting to see that already?
You know, at one point, and I haven't looked at anything recently, but a few months ago, we contacted a number of other very large retailers and couldn't find any other initiatives like this. But honestly, I think it's just a matter of time. And Walmart is so big that once they start doing it, it becomes a competitive advantage where the consumer knows I can go to Walmart and find things that are made in the USA. That I think we'll see the other retailers follow.
So at the Institute, you mentioned that you're working with manufacturers, you're with retailers, and most of the manufacturers you've been talking to are small and mid-sized companies. Is it true that most of the products that are coming from overseas, from the manufacturing operations there, are actually the smaller and mid-sized companies? I mean, there's some large companies, obviously, but I mean, is it true, like as it is here, where most of the businesses are small and mid-sized businesses? The same is true over in China as well.
Yes and no. So there are a few big leaders. So GE, for example, reopened Appliance Park in Kentucky, and they have put 4,000 people to work. They reopened, they modernized, they automated the production line, and they put a lot of people back to work. So there are some big examples like that. But I think where we see most of the growth, or maybe in companies that are revenue of you know, maybe 700 million to $1.5 billion, somewhere in there. And the reason why I think we see that growth is because they're more nimble. So it's easier for them to make decisions, or for a CEO to stand up and say, this is the right thing to do, and let's figure out a way. So, you know, reshoring it's a simple idea, but it's not easy. It's complicated, and it involves a lot of strategic thinking about what you could bring back. How do you extract labor from your production? How do you automate? How do you gauge the market to determine what products can be sold here? So there's a lot of moving parts to it.
It sounds like it would be because, I mean, obviously too, I mean, you're used to getting so much output from so many people at such a low price overseas, and then you have to worry about, okay, well, we can't necessarily bring that operation back, or can we, because we're going to have to pay the people who make these things here more money to produce fewer of them. And so I can kind of understand how the wheels would really have to turn, and there'd have to be a lot of work that's done on that. What's some of the other, have you actually seen some open resistance by companies? No, we're not interested in doing that. We've been doing this for years, and we kind of like it. Our shareholders like it, and because they like it, and because our stock is high, we see no reason to change, regardless of the economic patriotism or what have you.
Yeah, definitely. I think the resistance that we see is usually from boards, board of directors, who are counting the pennies. And if it is a stock price issue, it's clearly cheaper to manufacture in China. When you put the total cost of ownership side by side, we can generally get the cost to manufacture in the U.S. within 10 to 15%, somewhere in there. The cost. But it's still going to be a little bit more expensive. So you have to fight that battle, and also understand that there are components to it that aren't all dollars and cents. Right. So for example, if you can put a made in the USA label on a product, that's got value. Starbucks is a great example. They reshored the production of ceramic mugs, and this is one of the first things that they did. They have some other stuff going on now, but there were only 11 people that were put back to work in the ceramics factory, which is a small amount. However, they got so much good press out of it. I mean, they really got a lot of good press saying, look, Starbucks is doing the right thing. They're bringing manufacturing back to the U.S., and that has value. And
that operation can grow from 11 people to whatever in order to satisfy the increase in demand that kind of PR can have.
The other place where I think companies forget, and there might be some resistance, is it's not always easy to extract yourself from China. So you can't just close the door and turn off the lights and move on. There are employment laws. Sometimes you have to buy out employment contracts. You have to give notice. Sometimes you have to get permission from the Communist Party to leave if you've got a joint venture going. So that's a complicated part of it that I tell you, most of the people that are doing it don't see or don't remember, and then all of a sudden they get stuck with this problem, getting some of their production back. Molds and tools, almost impossible to come back from China. So those are all the kind of things that we would help companies consider when they're looking at that decision.
Are there any particular industries right now where you're starting to see kind of a groundswell of an interest in doing this? I mean, you talk about molds and tools, maybe not so much, but are there any particular industries that you can think of that really are kind of ripe for this and trying to bring more of this back to the United States?
Yeah, well, electronics for one, which is kind of a surprise because most of the world's electronics, like 35 to 40% of the world's electronics, are made in the Pearl River Delta, just outside of Hong Kong. So north and west of Hong Kong, in this whole region, that is where most electronics come from in the world. But what we're seeing is pieces of that being reshored. So Apple, for example, is now producing some of their laptops in Fremont, California, in Silicon Valley, some in Texas, and then I heard another location in the Midwest somewhere the other day. But what they've done is they've identified the market as being in the U.S., so they've brought the production of those products that serve this market back here. And as you may know, Apple doesn't make anything. They use all contract manufacturers. So these deals are with Foxconn, which is their contract manufacturer, but they are putting U.S. manufacturing people back to work, their jobs here in the U.S.
Assuming, Rosemary, that all things were equal and that getting past the hurdles, the barriers to come back on the other side of the ocean, where the manufacturing is taking place, okay, the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, no problem, it's signed up, you can go. what are the biggest barriers we have to bringing it back? Once we have that, you've got your manufacturing plant, it's up in space someplace, we just need to set it down someplace in the United States. What are the barriers to actually restarting business here and and what do we have to do in order to make it easier for those companies to relocate or bring manufacturing back?
That's a great question. So first of all, we wouldn't necessarily advocate that everything come back.
Of course. Right.
There's a lot of manufacturing that we don't want back, honestly. Right. I mean, 23-cent an hour workers making T-shirts should probably be in some low-cost market somewhere. What we want back is advanced manufacturing, which is more sophisticated. And what I think of as kind of workers who are partially skilled, maybe machine operators, and have some engineering components to their job, so they can maybe program a small robot, or they can do their own NC machine programming, that kind of thing. So that's the piece that we want back. In terms of barriers and where businesses should go to manufacture, because we've looked at the Institute, one of our interns did a lot of research on each state and where are the best places to manufacture. Right. So, and also we've done some government outreach programs. So governments across the nation want jobs back. I mean, this is good for the economy. It's good for all of us, right? And so they're starting to offer all sorts of incentives to make it attractive to manufacture there. We see most of those incentives in the lowest cost labor and the least expensive places to do business are mostly in the southeast. So, starting with Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, even Tennessee, some states, Louisiana, those states are the most economical. But there are advantages to manufacturing in California, for example, too. I mean, I live in Silicon Valley, and that's where innovation is.
Almost seems like kind of a no-brainer, that the electronics, for example, and the tech firms would bring their innovations back.
So economic areas are offering these sorts of incentives. Governments are supporting it. We're starting to see a lot of breakthrough thinking in how you can bring manufacturing back, which is really exciting. Really exciting.
It is, and you have been very, very active because you've made trips to Washington, and you're trying to do some things to kind of facilitate your efforts there at the Institute. Tell us a little bit about kind of what you've been doing.
Yeah, so we recognized early on that we needed to have a partnership with government because the government sort of sets the standard for how welcoming a city, a county, a state is going to be for manufacturing to come back. Are they making it easy? Is it beneficial? So we started out. We spent a week in Sacramento. Talking to our legislators there and spreading the word about reshoring and how important it was. And I'll tell you, to a person, every person in every office, every legislator we talked to, everybody was very favorable about this. We didn't get any pushback at all because they see this as a jobs growth initiative and an economic boost to their communities. So everybody was in favor. And then also the Reshoring Institute is a member of the National Manufacturers Association, NAM, which is a huge organization in Washington, D.C., and they do a lot of lobbying. And so I've been involved in several of their programs, so a lot of the trade stuff because of my background with China. But also, we have supported a few initiatives like the Exim Bank, for example. The Exim Bank finances manufacturers that are producing goods that are for export, essentially, and reissuing or renewing the authority for the Exim Bank is coming up for vote soon. So we spent time talking to our legislators in Washington about those kind of issues as well. Really important that we have that backbone.
Do you get the sense, Rosemary, that there is an understanding now by legislators across the country, and I kind of looking forward to hearing from you on this, that there is a firm understanding that the middle class essentially has really eroded to a point where some people question whether or not there actually is a middle class in this country, a true middle class, and that they believe that manufacturing is the key to once again kind of expanding that the middle class. Are you getting that impression?
Yes, I think there's been quite a lot of research about it. And what we do know is that the manufacturing jobs pay on average, or a skilled manufacturing job is about $65,000 to $85,000 a year, which is squarely in what we would define as the middle class.
Right.
And what we know from that is that people who earn that kind of wage buy houses, and they buy cars, and they shop at Walmart, and they help us fuel the economy going forward.
More conducive to a sustainable economy.
Sustainable, the crime rate goes down. There's all kinds of reasons why jobs are really important. So, rebuilding that part or that sector is important. But those kind of jobs are, like I said, they're not low-level assembly jobs. Those are more skilled manufacturing. Those are what we would call advanced manufacturing.
So with regard to the Reshoring Institute, as it's really kind of, again, we talk about in its early stages of development, but you're working with many others, you're doing some small-scale projects right now. What is kind of your hope for the future growth of the Institute and how you're going to be able to work with manufacturers? What do you see in the next year, 5, 10 years from now?
Well, we have a dual mission. One is to help manufacturers with the research and the small projects that they need. This is just at the Institute, that they need to support their decision to bring manufacturing back or to expand manufacturing, whatever it is. So we can help provide those kind of, we do a lot of research, we can help them provide research and then also the small projects. The other half of our mission is to educate students, because what we really want to do is have this great supply chain program that USD has, have those students be exposed to manufacturing. I mean, those are going to be the manufacturing leaders of the future. We have mostly graduate students as our interns, and we want those MBA students, for example, to go and be the next crop of CEOs. So we have a dual mission, and one is to help now, and that's very tactical and thoughtful and also research oriented, and then the other mission is for the future.
You just touched on something that we've talked about many times on Manufacturers Corner, and that is the void, the skills gaps that there are right now. Many manufacturers are dealing with open positions, vacancies. They're not able to take and fill these positions. They need people now, they need young people now. I think probably out of school, those people can step in who are already educated and trained, or at least have a certain skill level that can come and step in with minimal training. A lot of folks are retiring out. Rosemary, what do you think needs to happen? We already know that manufacturing jobs are needed in this country to kind of expand that middle class is a big key. What do we need to happen in order to get the interest on the part of young people in manufacturing careers? Because many of them are young enough or so young rather, that their parents did not have a job in industry, in a manufacturing capacity. They have to go back and they have to look at maybe their grandparents or their great-grandparents. And so this whole idea of making stuff in the United States may be new to them. What do we have to do in order to generate the awareness of these manufacturing jobs that are here now, and then create an interest on the part of future generations for new manufacturing jobs that may not be here yet?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you're absolutely right. There's a big skills gap, and that's been identified. So we need the graduate students that are going to be CEOs, but we also need welders and skilled workers and machine tool operators, that kind of thing. So as we offshored that manufacturing, those skills went too, and it's been a 15-year gap where there isn't anybody coming up the ladder. So from an education perspective, we need graduate programs, we need undergraduate programs, we need community college programs and training programs, and probably internships and apprenticeships, much like they have in Europe. The biggest growth that I see right now is in the community colleges, because they've taken over this role of doing a lot of training. And so, you can identify a training program with a community college and get the skills going in that direction right away. So that skill gap over time will be filled. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight, but probably over a few years it'll be filled, mostly, I think, by community colleges. So that's one effort. And then I'm sorry, I can't remember the other part of the question.
No, that's okay. We're talking about how do you get the word out about these opportunities and to generate that interest on the parts of the students coming in, or maybe even those individuals, even veterans coming back. Hey, this is a new time, this is a new day in America. We've got manufacturing jobs. We need you, and they pay well.
Exactly.
Take a look at this.
Yeah, so they pay well. That's certainly important. But I think it's also very important to recognize that this is not your grandfather's manufacturing.
Right.
This isn't an old, dirty, loud, crummy, repetitive manufacturing job. I mean, most manufacturing that we're bringing back, or in the U.S. today, I mean, there's a lot of clean room environments. There's a lot of, high tech. Using high-tech and computerized tools and a lot of automation, and side by side with robotics, and it looks different. It looks completely different. But one of the things that I always tell people is that we have to change the way we talk about manufacturing. We can't keep saying, "Oh, manufacturing,"
Yes.
And I mean, we have to really bring it to the sunlight and tell our young people this is a great job. I mean, you're actually making things. It's interesting. It's productive. It's use of technology, and it's a completely different world than it was in 1960.
Yeah,
so that's, we have to change our conversation. We have to change the way we talk about it also.
It's a really, really good point. Rosemary, we're kind of short on time now, so tell us, for those people and even business owners right now who might be looking in, who are interested in talking to you about maybe reshoring opportunities for them, or talking to you more about what you do, even if they just have an interest in learning more about the Reshoring Institute, what can they do?
Absolutely contact us. We have a great website. They can download information there, and there's a contact page. It's www.reshoringinstitute.org. And there's an email site on there too. They can always email me. It's rcoates, R-C-O-A-T-E-S, @reshoringinstitute.org.
It's just that easy.
Just that easy.
Rosemary, it's been a great conversation. Thanks so much for coming down and seeing us. We hope to have you back on again soon.
Great. Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Okay.
That will bring this edition of Manufacturers Corner to a close. Thanks again to my guest, Rosemary Coates of the Reshoring Institute. If you have an idea for a topic or a guest, please let us know by visiting manufacturerscorner.com and clicking on Contact Us. All you have to do is fill out that short form and submit it, and we'll get back to you. If you're interested in reaching tens of thousands of C-level executives and you'd like to sponsor our program or advertise on our website, simply give us a call at 951-697-3098. And you can feel free to share this video with others. We sure would appreciate it. And if you like what we do here on Manufacturers Corner, like us on Facebook.com/Manufacturers Corner. I'm Jeff Allen. Thanks again for watching.
This program was brought to you by the following proud sponsors: Paulson Manufacturing, saving the eyes and lives of workers and first responders by manufacturing the highest quality and most reliable safety protective gear in the world. And by the All-Tech Media Group, the region's leading multimedia video production and marketing company, creating powerful and innovative marketing strategies that deliver exponential returns.